Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Keys, and I'm one of the librarians here at Lone Star Montgomery. We also have Monica Kamek here. She's one of our full-time librarians, and she's going to be helping me monitor the chat and if we have any technical difficulties. So let me go ahead and pull up my presentation. All right, so today I'm going to be covering starting the research process, finding resources for your research, search strategies, and basic database searching. I'm also going to be demonstrating using a few of the resources that I recommend for your research. Resources come in different types and formats. These can be books, articles, or websites. Books can be considered either scholarly or non-scholarly. Scholarly items have gone through a rigorous publishing process and have been extensively reviewed. Articles can also be considered scholarly or non-scholarly. Non-scholarly articles are usually meant to inform or entertain the public. So think about magazine or newspaper articles. The language will be informal, and you'll often find ads in the middle of the pages. Scholarly articles are meant for professors, students, and researchers within the field. You'll often find charts and graphs, and there will be citations. The language is usually highly technical, and the purpose is to present research findings. Websites are almost never scholarly. The majority of websites are designed to entertain or inform the public. Websites can be useful places to find background information on a topic. Remember that anyone can publish anything on the internet. This is why it is so important for you to evaluate any website before you use the information. When you're evaluating a website, there are a few things you want to look at. First, who is the author? Do they have expertise on the topic? Do they have experience in the field or an advanced degree like a PhD or a master's? Second, is the information accurate? Are there factual errors on the website? Does the information match up with what other sources are saying? Third, what is the purpose of the website? Is the author trying to inform you or to persuade you to feel a certain way about a topic? And you oftentimes want to look at what the website is. So is it, from a university? Is it a blog? Is it from a news organization? Fourth, is the information relevant to your topic? And then finally, do you need information that is very current? So that doesn't really pertain to this particular class just because you're researching, Victorian era literature. But if you were doing research in one of the sciences or a health science, like a nursing class, those require information usually that is very current. And so if you did need that, how current is the information on the site? Is that information outdated? So I know that sometimes evaluating websites can be kind of difficult. So I have a kind of short activity for you guys. I'm going to give you 2 websites and you're going to evaluate them. So let me go ahead and pop them in the chat. So what I want you to do is I'm going to give you 2 websites. I want you to take about 2 minutes to look them over. And I want you to pretend that you've come across these articles on these websites when you're doing your research for your English class. And what I want you to decide is whether these are reliable sites, whether you would use this information for your paper. Not necessarily as one of your sources, but just, for your own personal information. So here is the first one. And here is the second one. So let's go ahead and come back here at 9:18. And if you have any thoughts about the websites, you can go ahead and pop them in the chat. All right, so it's been about 2 minutes. So let's see what people think. Okay, so Nathaniel, the second one seems more put together and more informative. First one is more fun-based and for quick references. Nicholas says the first one is fake. It has no author, says when it was written. Anybody have any other thoughts? All right, let's go ahead and look at the first one. Okay, so this first site, it's an article. It says, reader, I married him, marriage in Jane Eyre and Agnes Grey. So somebody pointed out there is no author. So it's not so much that it's fake. It's more that because there's no author, we have no way of determining who has written this. Also, it's a blog, which doesn't give it a lot of weight. So I would be very skeptical about using this information. And then the second webpage, Jane Eyre and the Rebellious Child, a few things to point out. First, we do have an author, and there's some biographical information. So she's a professor of English literature at Oxford University, and she specializes in Victorian literature. And then also the website itself is from the British Library, which is kind of like the UK version of the Library of Congress. It's a very well-established, well-respected institution. So this information, I would say, is much more credible. The author, we could consider her an expert because she probably has at least one PhD, probably more, and she knows what she's talking about because this is what she actually teaches. Now, neither of these sites are scholarly sources because remember, scholarly sources, they've gone through that peer review process, citations. So you wouldn't be able to use them in your paper, but websites like this, really good place to get background information. Also, if you need help with, themes for your work, that's a good place to look as well. All right, sometimes beginning the research process can be a challenge, but there are some solutions you can begin with. You can begin with reference resources like encyclopedias or dictionaries. Although you usually can't use these sources in your papers, they are valuable to find background information. If you're writing a paper about how Victorian society impacted a particular, you're going to need to do some background research on Victorian society, as well as your author. So for example, in the Victorian era, they had these things called debtor's prison, where you could actually be sent to prison if you owed money. And then they also had very lax child labor laws. And Charles Dickens, his dad was sent to a debtor's prison when he was a kid, and he had to leave school when he was 12 to go work in a warehouse. And if you look at his novels, poverty and child labor are some common themes. So having that background information and knowing that about him would be very helpful if I was going to write a paper on one of his books. We also have the resource guides. These are online guides that were created by librarians to help you with writing a research paper. We have collections of different types of sources that will be useful to you. And later on, I'm going to be showing you one guide that you might want to use. And then finally, we have the librarians. A large part of what we do is assisting students with finding and evaluating resources. And so we can help you either online or in person. Databases don't read in natural language. An entire sentence into the search bar, the database is going to search for articles that contain every single word that you have entered, and you'll probably end up with a lot of articles that aren't related to what you're actually looking for. When you're searching the databases, it's important to have keywords. Keywords are who, what, when, where, and why of a topic. So think about the important words and phrases that stand out to you. You can get keywords from reference resources and from the subject terms in journal articles. Also, like those two websites that I showed you, that would be a good place to find keywords. And just to show you, this is an example of some subject terms. You'll find these on the information page of an article. And a lot of these terms were created by librarians. And you can also use these to further narrow down the scope of your research. When searching in the databases, you want to consider combining keywords and phrases. The keywords you choose and how you combine them will impact your search results. In this example, I'm looking for articles on A Tale of Two Cities. But if I combine Dickens and war or Dickens and royalty, I'm probably going to get a lot of articles that are not related to that. Whereas if I combine Dickens and French Revolution or Dickens and a specific character name like Darnay, I should get more focused results related to what I'm looking for. Databases use Boolean operators. These are words that tell the database what to do. The Boolean operators that we use are the words and, or, and not. Each of these tell the databases to do something different. They will help to expand or narrow your search results. You'll often see Boolean operators in uppercase letters because many databases read them if they are in uppercase letters. The operator and will narrow your search. This is telling the database that you want it to search for multiple terms and only give you articles that contain all of the terms that you have entered. In this case, I only want articles that are about both Dickens and the French Revolution. The operator or will expand your search. Here you're telling the database that either of the terms you entered are acceptable. This operator is useful when searching for synonyms, related words, or maybe the terminology in your field has changed. So for example, here we want articles that are either about Britain or England, because sometimes those are used interchangeably. And then the operator not will narrow your search. You're telling the database that you don't want any articles that contain a particular word or phrase. Maybe you keep getting the same word showing up in your search results. So you want the data exclude that. And here we're telling the database that we don't want any articles about the United States. Some of the databases have Boolean operators built into the search feature. For example, in the Academic Search Complete database, you'll see the word "and" next to the search bar. It's set to "and" because that is the most commonly used Boolean operator. If you click on it, you can change it to or not. Now, some databases don't have this built in, so you'll have to actually type the operator into the search bar. Another search technique that you can use is phrase searching. This is where you put quotation marks specific phrase. As I mentioned earlier, the databases will search for whatever words you enter. They won't keep those words in the order that you type them. So if you need them to be in a specific order, you have to put quotation marks around them. For example, the words best, of, and times on their own and out of order don't really mean a lot, because if I search for that, the first article that I get is 100 best fantasy books of all time. However, as a phrase, it is part of a very specific quote from A Tale of Two Cities. So if I wanted to search for that quote, I would need to put those quotation marks around the phrase. As you gather resources, it's very important that you keep them organized. You can create folders in your email account. If you have Gmail, then you can create folders in your Google Drive. And some of the databases have a feature where they will actually send articles directly to your Google Drive. You could also create folders on your computer or on a device like a USB drive, or you could keep physical folders. Does anybody have any questions so far? Everybody okay? Nobody's answering.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so now I'm going to move on to showing you the library website and some specific resources. Get out of this. All right, so I'm going to start out at lonestar.edu, and to get to the library website, I'm going to click on the word libraries. And this will take me to the homepage for the Lone Star College library system. The first thing I want to point out is on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, there is a red button with some speech bubbles. If you hover your cursor over it, it will say chat with a librarian. The library system does offer a chat service where you can be connected to a librarian in the system to get assistance with research, citations, really anything to do with the library. And if I scroll down in this bar, first thing I want to show you is library catalog. The library catalog is where you can search for any items that we have physically in the library, like books, DVDs, textbooks, that kind of thing. Right now, because of COVID, you can't come into the library and just browse. However, if you go into the catalog and you find something that you want to look at, we will pull it for you and you can come in and pick it up. And then research databases, that is where you get the databases. That's where you find your journal articles, reference resources, ebooks, and streaming videos. going to scroll down to where it has research and then research guides. This is where you have the resource guides. So in the middle of the page where it says visit the STAR Center, this is where you go, or one of the ways you can get here to make an appointment. So like I mentioned, because of COVID, you can't just come into the library. You have to make an appointment for everything. So this is like in-person tutoring, the right place. And then for the library, you can reserve a study space or a computer. We also have research and citation help with the librarians. You can get your student ID. You can pick up items like a book that we have. If you need to print something out, we can print it out for you and you can come and pick it up. So if you wanted to make an appointment for any of those, you would come onto this page and then choose your tab and then click to make an appointment, and you'll choose your date and your time. And then back on this page, I'm going to scroll down. And on the left-hand side is our contact information. We do offer assistance through text, so that's the number for that. Just be aware that text message rates do apply. And then our phone number, our email address, and then tutoring information, and then our hours of operation. And then these buttons you can click on to get to access to our different services. Library services are going to be the research and citation guides. Tutoring services is where you can get online tutoring as well as information about in-person tutoring and skills workshops. And then technical support, if you have any questions or any problems with D2L, you can come here to get their contact information. They are separate from OTS, like OTS is their own phone number. If you need OTS, their information is here as well. And I'm going to scroll up just a little bit. So right here in these two drop-down menus are the resource guides. Those are those pages that have all the different resources. The left-hand menu are the subject guides. These are guides that are specific to particular subjects like English, art, history, math. And then the right-hand column are kind of other assorted guides. So there are some class-specific guides like EUC 1300. And then there is one specific for this class. It's English 1302, writing about Victorian literature. So I'm going to click that and then click. On the left-hand side of the screen, if you click use your sources, that will take you to the right place. And then cite your sources will take you to our citation guides. If I scroll down a little bit, in the center, we have some ebooks from our ebook databases. These are kind of more about Victorian literature in general, as well as some themes. There are definitely way more ebooks in the databases. These are just a select few volumes. And if I scroll down, in these different tabs are different sources that are organized by type. So the first tab are going to be the databases, and I'm going to show you of them that you might find very helpful. The first one I'm going to go into is literature. Now, if you are not on campus, it is going to ask you to log in. I'm on the campus Wi-Fi, so I don't have to. You can either type in your library barcode number, which is on the back of your student ID. It's the long number, or there's a link underneath that. And I know sometimes it's hard, it's easy to miss, but you click the link and it will let you log in with your My Lone Star login. So the same login you use to get into D2L and your student email account. So on this database, I could search for a particular author or work. So if I search for Charles Dickens, go ahead and click that. And there is an entry on him. So there is an article all about him, some biographical information. It's pretty in-depth. And there are also some tools on this article, so I could print it out. If I click share, that will give me a permalink. A permalink is a link that you can use. So instead of having to get back into the database and search for the article, I can use this link to get directly back into the article. You can also download it. There is a citation tool, which is a computer-generated citation. Now, one thing I want to advise you is you can use these generated citations, but you always want to make sure that you're double checking that they are formatted correctly, because they're generated. Sometimes there are some weird like spacing issues. So just make sure that it is formatted correctly. And the librarians, we can help with that as well. And then finally, Save to Drive. If you're logged into your Google Drive, you can send articles directly there. So if I scroll down, there are also reference articles on Dickens, as well as some literary criticism articles, information about different works. And then I can also search for particular work like Tale of Two Cities. So for this particular novel, there is an article, and again, the same tools. Actually, this novel has its own entire page. So there's that article. There's also reference articles, literary criticism articles, information about different characters. Obviously, depending on the author and the work that you have, there might be less information than this. Dickens is just a very popular author, so there happens to be a lot on him. So this is a very kind of basic overview of this database. Does anybody have any questions? I'm going to take that as a no, since nobody's responding. I'm assuming that most people have used at least one database for like English 1301 or EDUC 1300. So I'm not going like super into the basics of databases. But if it's been a while, like a refresher, or maybe you haven't, we certainly, any of the librarians, we can walk you through it and go way more in depth in how the database is. So the next database I'm going to go into is JSTOR. This is a really, really good database if you're doing any type of research in like the arts or the humanities. So some of the databases you'll search and there will be articles that you don't have access to. JSTOR is kind of unique in that it's set up to all of the search results are full text, like you'll be able to read everything. And I believe all the sources in here are scholarly. So when you get in here, it'll take you to the home page with the search bar. I'm going to go ahead and click advanced search because I have multiple search terms. And in the top line, I'm going to type in Dickens. And then just to point out, have that Boolean operator that's built in. And then in the second bar, Tale of Two Cities. If I needed more bars, I could click add a search box. And then I'm going to go ahead and click submit advanced search. So now I have my search results. And if you had a ton of results, you could limit some of those. You could get rid of some of those results using search limiters. Search limiters are tools you can use to narrow down your search results. And these are showing up on the left-hand side. So I can limit, the type of source that I'm looking at or the publication date. Now, like I mentioned, for this particular research that you guys did isn't super important, but for like the sciences, medicine, technology, you're usually required to have articles that are research that is less than, I think, 5 years old. So for those, this would be super important. And then also you might want to limit it by the subject. So you'll find your article, and I'm going to choose this one, title, and it will take me to the information page. And from here, I can see the title, the author, where it is coming from. So this is from the journal PMLA, when it was published, how long it is. And if I scroll down, these URLs, these are those permalinks that you can use to access the article directly. So I don't have to search for the article before, or again, excuse me. And then again, there is a citation tool, which I'll just point out that for journal articles, it's super important that you double check the citations, because a lot of times authors will capitalize every single letter in the title of their article, and you're not supposed to do that when you're doing your works cited. So you have to fix that before you put it in. So you can use this as like a basic guide, but always just double check that your citations are correct. And then for this particular article, there is an abstract. Now, not every article in JSTOR has an abstract, but some of them do. And this is just going to be a short summary, usually one paragraph that will give you an overview of the entire article. So I could read that to kind of figure out if it's something I actually want to use. Now, if I do want to use this article, I can't search in the article or print out from this page. I know that it does say view search results, but if I were to click on it, it doesn't show me where on the page my results are. It's just somewhere on the page my terms are appearing. What I have to do is click download PDF, and it'll ask you to accept the terms and conditions. I'll click accept and download, and usually it'll give you the article straight away, but for whatever reason, I have to click download again. So then you'll get the article as a PDF, and from here you can print it out. I can also do Control or Command F and search for a word, and it'll show me where in the article that shows up. So that's a basic overview of JSTOR. Are there any questions on this database?
No, ma'am.
All right. So if you just don't feel like asking a question in front of the class, which I totally understand, I'll be here until 4 p.m. You could also email us or ask after I'm done with my presentation. So that's JSTOR. And then the last database that I'm going to show you is one of the ebook databases. Just as I mentioned, we have a lot of ebooks, and there's quite a few that are specific to some of your authors, as well as some of the works that you have. The one I'm going to show you is the ebook Central, just because this is the one that I prefer. And again, when you get in, it'll take you to the home page with the search bar. I'm going to click on advanced search again, and I'm going to search for the same terms, and I'm putting this in quotation marks. Now, because this is an ebook database, it does give me the actual novel, which is not what I'm looking for. So I can use my search limiters to get rid of that. The search limiters in here are also on the left-hand side. Again, you have publication date. If you were getting a lot of results in another language, you can also do the language. Or I did have a student one time whose first language was Spanish, and so they wanted articles in Spanish, and so he limited it to Spanish. But the one I'm going to be looking at is subject. So I don't want the novel, I want literary criticism. So I'm going to go ahead and check off literary criticism, and so that will get rid of those. And then I'm going to go ahead and click into my book, and it will give me title and author, a basic description of the book, as well as some chapter headings, which might be very helpful to you to decide if this is something you want to look at. Like if I was doing the novel Nicholas Nickleby, that would be helpful to know. And then over here on the left-hand side, there are a few tools. So again, we have a citation tool. If I was using this book, if I'm only using one chapter, I don't want to cite the entire book. I need to just that one chapter. So I would have to edit this citation. And then share link to book is that permalink where you can use this to access the book directly. And then if you want to read the book, now it does have a download feature, but you can't download or print out the entire book. There is a limit, and it'll tell you what the limit is. But you can click read online to read the entire book online. And the reason that I like this database in particular is that you can actually search in the books. So I can actually, I'm going to click this button right here because I can search from there as well. And I can search for my character name, and it tells me how many times it shows up. And if I scroll down, it'll tell me where in the book it shows up, and it'll highlight it for me. And if I wanted to just browse the book, I can click on this button and just kind of browse. Like I could go to contents and see what the chapter headings are. And I could go to the index and see an index of the different people, places, keywords that show up in the book. And up at the top, we have some of those same tools. So there is this button with the links. And if I click that, that's the permalink. And then this speech bubble, that is the citation tool. Any questions over this database? All right, so I'm going to get out of that and go back to the resource page. And there are some other databases listed here. Those are just a few that I wanted to point out to you. And then next over, we have a tab where some general websites. These are websites that are about a bunch of different authors in the Victorian era. The only one I'm going to show you is this first one. So that second article that I showed you, it actually came from this website. It's from the British Library, which, as I mentioned, is a very well-respected, well-established institution. And they have this entire guide all over Romantic and Victorian literature and society. And up here, they have it separated by authors, works, themes, articles. They also have a lot of very rare items, and so you can take a look at those. So under authors, we have some of the Brontes, Lewis Carroll, if anybody is doing him, Dickens, Thomas Hardy. I don't think Shelley was listed, but Robert Louis Stevenson, Trollope, Oscar Wilde. So quite a few of the authors that was on the list. And then I'm just going to go into the one on Dickens. So if you click on one of these authors, it will give you a short entry on their life, some biographical information, articles that they're mentioned in, and then some related articles. Also some pages on specific works, like Christmas Carol. And again, on the novel and some related articles. And if you go into one of these articles, it looks kind of like the one I showed you, where you can get information about the author and the article and some related articles. And then finally, themes. So they have pages on different themes that show up in Romantic and Victorian literature, like the Gothic, children's literature, London, crime, poverty. So some really interesting, good information here. And then the next tab over, there are some websites on specific authors. So the Brontes, Robert Louis Stevenson, Anthony Trollope. And then finally, we have some streaming videos from our video databases. The first two are kind of more about Victorian era in general, although they do talk about a few of the authors that are listed. And then there are some videos on that are specifically about individual authors. And if you wanted to search in the video databases, you can click this link. Are there any questions about any of the sources, anything I've gone over, or maybe something about the library?
No, ma'am.
All right, so if nobody has any questions, if you just don't feel like asking in front of everybody, you can always ask me later on, or contact us through email, the chat, text, whichever you prefer. And just to kind of briefly go over what we discussed, we talked about starting the research process, finding resources, search strategies, and some basics on the databases. So that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you so much for hosting this and all of this excellent information that you gave us. She did record it, so we will